Welcome. In this last part of the three-part series on the ego's world of denial and projection from the perspective of A Course in Miracles, we're going to focus now on denial, the second part of the ego's strategy that's very popular in this world. As before, I'll be using material from my first book, Healing the Course. In one of the earlier videos in this series, we looked at the split mind. When we separated from God, or we thought we were separated, because that's impossible, our mind fractured into three parts. The ego, which believes the separation is real and believes it must defend and attack to get what it wants in this world. That's the wrong mind. And then the right mind of Spirit or Holy Spirit, which is saying the separation actually never happened. There's a line in the Course that says, "You dwell not here, but in eternity. You travel but in dreams, while safe at home." It wants to wake us up to that reality by teaching us forgiveness. Lastly, we have the third part of the mind, the decision maker, which is a term coined by my teacher, Dr. Kenneth Wapnick. This is the sleeping Son of God, who's got these two counselors, the ego and the Holy Spirit, in their heads. And in this first slide, we've got the decision maker listening to the ego mind, which of course is the most common position that's taken up in the world. Now, we always look within our minds before we look out into the world. So this example, the decision makers found the ego, and then it projects it out onto the world. And so, as it believes in victims and victimizers, then that's what it sees in the world, and needs to protect itself from people and situations. However, we do have the choice of listening to another counselor. Here, the decision maker has had a miracle and is looking within and discovers spirit in the mind, and therefore it looks out onto the world, same world as before, but it has a different interpretation. It now sees people in the world doing only one or two things. They're either asking for love, or they're extending it. Of course, calls that the Holy Spirit's judgment. So if someone comes up and puts a gun against your head, they're asking for love. And if you stay in that space, then some appropriate action will come up. You don't know what it would be. It's the ego that always wants to know what to do ahead of time. But Spirit will give you a win-win solution from the heart. What would serve the person with the gun, or what would serve you? And there's no way you could work that out beforehand. Of course, this sort of trust is learned gradually, but when you find it really works in every situation, then this becomes the norm. Of course, an example of someone who did this all the time was Jesus. He looked within and saw the Christ. He looked without and he saw a lot of sleeping Christs around, but there was still the Christ. He could see past the body, the ego, the personality. And that's how he treated people. And that's why he was such a powerful healer. You imagine someone looking at you as the Christ, and then you get a chance to think, well, maybe I'm not this guilty ego. I'm maybe still as God created me. In that instant, there's no need for illness, disease, and you let it go, and it can be gone in under a second. We'll add this a little more in a moment. So if we go back to deciding to listen to the advice of the ego, then when we look within, we don't want to and can't bear to see all the guilt and hatred and pain in there, and we want to throw it out of our mind onto the world. and we can do it in one of two directions. We can, as often happens, we throw it onto other people, other bodies. This is anger, where they're responsible for our lack of peace, and they need to change their behavior. But you can also throw it out onto the body in the form of disease and sickness. That may sound a little strange, but the ego strategy is, please don't look in the mind where you'll find me and where healing can occur. I want you to focus out there on the world, on other people's bodies or your own body. And that way I'm safely in the shadows, healing can't be accomplished, and I can keep living longer as the ego. Or in other words, the ego seeks to make us mindless. In our daily lives, our hidden guilt is constantly being triggered. For example, someone pushes into the queue in front of us. A car forces us to slow down by suddenly cutting in front of us. A person insults us. We usually experience, quote, justified anger in these circumstances, not realizing that the source of our pain is really in our mind and nothing to do with these events in the world. Our ego would automatically advise us to attack back, either expressing our anger at the people involved or projecting our anger internally, eventually resulting in sickness. To the ego, either is satisfactory, for it focuses our attention onto the world where the problem is not, and away from our mind where the problem is. I'd like to give you an example of this in a healing session I conducted at Findhorn. Actually, this person was in the next room, so I could hear her problems quite well. So this is from the Healing of the Course book. While I was living at the Findhorn Foundation, a woman who had been ill for 3 weeks approached me for a healing session. She had flu-like symptoms and a persistent cough which kept her awake at night, and occasionally me. During the relaxation stage of the healing session, as I was holding my hands above her chest, she began to feel an uncomfortable sensation in that area. I wanted to explore this as I felt it contained some insight for her. To help her accept the discomfort, I asked her to describe what she saw in her chest. She said it felt as if there was a closed wooden gate there. I asked her what she wanted to do with that gate, thinking she might gently open it. Instead, in her mind's eye, she took a large hammer and smashed the gate into pieces. Suddenly, she became aware of an intense anger that was focused in this area of the body. As she became aware of it, it moved higher up and lodged in her throat. This caused a coughing fit to occur. Pursuing the approach of helping to accept what was there, I asked her to describe how her throat appeared to her. She first described it as a hard red ball, but it suddenly changed into a picture of a tall, black, ugly-looking monster. She was very disturbed at seeing this image in her mind. I knew the picture of the monster was an important messenger, carrying information about what was denied in her unconscious. It was important for her to accept this new picture and not to resist it. I encouraged her to try to make friends with the image, but she found this very difficult. However, at one point she felt guided to give it a gift. She saw herself take a golden chain out of her heart and clasp it round the neck of the monster. As she did this, its eyes changed from being cold, hard and angry to eyes of love and compassion. I encouraged her to approach the monster to see if she could touch it. She was able to stroke it for a few moments only. At that point, the healing session finished. She had become aware that during these 3 weeks of illness, she had been denying strong feelings of anger. The following day, she told me that her cough had disappeared shortly after the session had finished, and the remaining symptoms of her illness had also now gone. we've both been given a powerful example of the effect of denial. Her original anger had been internalized, creating sickness in the body. It was here that she thought the problem lay, until she undid her denial, accepting the pain in the mind and let it go. The Course says, sickness is anger taken out on the body, so that it will suffer pain. That's from chapter 28 in the text, section 6, paragraph 5. The ego's constant plan is to reverse cause and effect and keep us from looking at the cause of our distress, which is in our mind. For if we were to return to our mind, we would also discover the presence of the Holy Spirit and listen to Him instead of the ego. This is the last thing the ego wants, for that would lead to its own death. Its constant chant to us is that the problem is in the world and not the mind. And such is the power of this illusion that we choose to believe its advice. As we seek to blame the world for our distress by denying and projecting our problems, our guilt will only increase, for on some level we know denial and projection is not justified, and we must eventually take responsibility for the separation ourselves. So there's no justified anger. Doesn't mean anger is sin, but the ego attempts to make anger justified. The Course says, yet projection will always hurt you. It reinforces your belief in your own split mind, and its only purpose is to keep the separation going. It is solely a device of the ego to make you feel different from your brothers and separated from them. That's from the text, chapter 6, section 2, paragraph 3. Let's summarize now the projection and the miracle. The diagrams under 1 in the diagram there are about projection, the ego's solution, and beneath the diagonal line is the miracle, the answer. So at the top, we've got on the left the ego mind, and if you look at the metaphysics, it's from that thought of separating from God, which we deny through that veil of forgetfulness, we actually project out a world. And on there, we seem to have real people doing real things. They're images on a cinema screen. But it's a very convincing cinema screen. In the bubble there, it's saying, you hurt me, I want you to change your behavior. I think we all know about that. If the world changes, then I will be at peace. Actually, this reminds me of the time of the first Gulf War. I was living at Fintall, my late wife Celise. And she was wondering what contribution could she make to achieve peace. She was born within a guidance. It was always there. She could turn to it. And so she turned to it. And it said, what is it about Saddam Hussein that upset you? Well, she said, he's just someone who uses his power to just take what he wants, to run roughshod over people just to get his needs met. And a voice said, do you do any of that? It was a bit startled. And then the voice mentioned our relationship. Do you do that with Michael sometimes? And then, of course, like we all do, she had to admit, yes, sometimes I use my power over him. For Celise, it wasn't shouting. She would just go quiet. A silent anger would be there, and she wouldn't communicate with me, perhaps for a couple of days. And of course, that's very effective at wearing someone down. Or someone like Saddam will fire a bullet at you. So she was suddenly shown a mountain with Saddam on top, holding a very long mirror in front of him and rotating. And at the bottom of the mountain, the world was gathered. And what, of course, had been shown here, that Saddam was mirroring the unhealed stuff in us. If we're getting upset against Saddam or any other dictator or any other person, it's because they're showing that we have some aspect inside us. Of course, who wants to see that we have Saddam inside us? But as I just illustrated, we do. And the voice said, the greatest contribution, Celeste, you can make to this war is to heal the Saddam inside you. Okay, powerful. Underneath the picture of the world there, we have like a summary of projection. What I believe is in my mind is seen outside of me. The problem is always out there, like in Saddam, and never in me. But now healing is impossible, because only healing can occur in the mind. Also, problems seem to be many and different. And what you want, what the ego wants, is if everything would improve outside, at last I will be at peace. I remember someone in one of the work departments at Fintorn was getting very upset about someone who reminded her of her mother, who she hadn't forgiven. So much so she decided to move to another department, because the person running that department was so kind and gentle. But the following day a guest arrived who was just like her mother, and so it started all over again. On the left, we have the miracle. Here, the decision maker, the sleeping Son of God, now listens to the Holy Spirit. This is what a miracle is, simply put. It's a shift in perception. Instead of looking through the ego's eyes, you look through Spirit's eyes. There you realize the problem's in the mind. Healing is now possible. And actually, there's only one problem we get to realize in the end, and that's we think we've separated from God. And there's only one solution: forgiveness. And I've done, I think, a couple of videos now on forgiveness, if you want to look at those. It may seem a bit puzzling that there's only one problem: separation from God. It doesn't seem like that, does it? If we take the example of, say, a partner's death or being separated from a partner, what's really going on there is it's reminded us that deep down in our subconscious, where it's denied, we believe we've separated from our Father, from the God. And that is terribly painful. We can't go back. Remember the Garden of Eden story when they were thrown out of the garden and God put angels with flaming spears at the entrance so you'd never go back. And deep down, we believe this lie. All the way, all the time, the kind Father is waiting for us to come back. Or you might have that fear of war, perhaps nuclear war. And what's happening there deep down is we think we're at war with God. We broke up heaven and set up shop in time and space, and He's after us. He seeks to punish us, to kill us. And that deep down is what the real fear is. So every day we have the choice of turning to the Holy Spirit for the miracle, to ask His help, to see it differently. In trying to get rid of our guilt, we only increase it. The only way out of this circular trap is to open ourselves to the ever-present help of Spirit in our mind. We need a shift of perception, a miracle, to see the situation differently. We need to find and uncover the darkness in our mind and forgive it. Whilst we value denial, we keep our darkness hidden and make it real. This is what the Course calls making the error real. When we accept our murderous thoughts, we can forgive them, and with the help of the Holy Spirit, see them for the illusions that they are. So thank you for joining me on this journey of the ego's world of denial and projection. As we look around the world, that's what we're seeing most of the time. Every now and then we'll have a miracle, and we see a miracle, and everything is blessed because of it. If you want to pursue these subjects a bit more, I recommend my own teacher's book, Dr. Kenneth Wapnick. And here you see 3 books that I've produced. And I've also produced audios, which you can have on CDs or download. Just go to my website and you'll find them there. And if you want to have further videos, then just look underneath and click on the subscribe button. Click on the bell, which will give you an email alert. So, thank you for being on this journey with me. I wish you all the best with it. And daily classrooms of forgiveness, of course, will give us lots of practice. Thank you.